Now at 6:30, a petition to repeal Senate Bill 1 failed to collect enough signatures. With just hours left before the law takes effect, how the petition's organizers are responding.
Plus, the latest funding changes in the state's budget, why efforts to provide tax relief could actually cost billions.
And
when we actually get on it still is an open question.
The deadline to pass President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill is fast approaching, but Senate Republicans are facing major hurdles before the final vote. What this means for the future of the president's tax bill. Newswatch starts right now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Acker.
And I'm Charlie Ehlenfeld. Welcome to Newswatch.
Southeast Ohio is still under an extreme heat warning from the National Weather Service.
For more on how much longer this heat will stick around, let's hand it over to forecaster Steve Nedlick.
Yeah, guys, we've actually got a slight bit of relief here today with some of this rain that has pushed into our area. It's brought some thunder with it and some downpours to our area, so it has dropped our temperature temporarily. Right now we're sitting at 80 degrees, which really feels kind of chilly after what we've been dealing with, but it's really sticky out there, 71% humidity. So again, we'll take what we can get. We still do have this heat advisory and extreme heat warning because these temperatures are going to bounce right back up. But we do have also these flash flood and flood advisories dotted over our map because of these downpours, and that's kind of going to continue into tonight with our overnight low only getting down to 71, so we've kind of already gotten our late night cooling. And this chance of thunderstorms is kind of going to go away once the sun goes down, similar to last night because it's kind of pulling its power source. And then if we look at tomorrow, right back up to 95. So we got one more day of this heat and a little bit of rain, so stay tuned for my full forecast to see what the weekend looks like.
If you're looking for places to escape the heat, you can check out the Athens City Community Center, Athens County Public Library, and Mountain Mystic in Nelsonville during normal business hours. Gallia County Senior Center and the Field of Hope Gymnasium in Vinton County are both open to the public from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. respectively. Hocking Athens Perry Community Action Program, or HAPCAP, is also using its locations in Gloucester, Logan, and New Lexington as cooling centers. Ohio County officials confirmed a 9th death after severe flooding in West Virginia. The victim was identified as 83-year-old Sandra Parsons from Triadelphia, West Virginia. She was presumed missing and was found late Tuesday. In a press briefing yesterday, Governor Patrick Morrisey expressed his condolences.
I know every death that we've had to report, has weighed very heavily on my mind and on all the folks on our team, because at the end of the day, we can rebuild roads and we can rebuild homes. You can't take back the loss of life.
If you have questions about flood resources, including where to make donations and financial aid options, you can visit the website on your screen.
A petition to stop Senate Bill 1 from going into effect has failed to collect enough signatures. The volunteer-led movement needed to collect 250,000 signatures to stop Senate Bill 1 from going into effect tomorrow and put it on the November ballot. The bill bans diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, programs in colleges and universities in Ohio. In a statement from Ari Faber, who coordinated petitions in Southeast Ohio, Faber wrote, "By dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and restricting academic freedom, SB 1 sends a clear message to students, faculty, and researchers across the country. Ohio is no longer a place to learn, teach, or grow." Universities across Ohio have been preparing for Senate Bill 1 since it passed in March. Back in April, Ohio University said it would be closing the Multicultural Center, Pride Center, and Women's Center. Earlier this week, the university announced those spaces will be turned into student study spaces until it finds a more permanent solution.
The Ohio General Assembly passed the state's controversial 2-year budget, but some lawmakers are critical of funding allocations. In its current version, the budget calls for a flat state income tax of 2.75% for Ohioans making more than $26,000 a year. Experts say this tax would save money for those making more than 6 figures, but it would cost the state more than $1 billion. The conference committee also made changes to public school funding. Now, districts will only be permitted to keep 40% of property taxes collected for cash carryover before property owners will be refunded. Republican lawmakers say this cap will give property tax relief to homeowners, while Democrats say it cuts nearly $2 billion from public schools. The conference committee also finalized funding for allocations for the new Cleveland Browns Stadium. The stadium will be funded through a performance grant program with almost $2 billion from the state's unclaimed funds. The state budget also includes a $25 million cut to public libraries. Libraries were previously funded through the Public Library Fund, which guarantees 1.7% of state funds go towards libraries. Governor DeWine increased that funding to 1.75% of state funds, but lawmakers cut the program from the budget. Now, libraries will be funded through direct appropriations in all future budgets. DeWine has until Monday to sign the bill into law, but can still veto line item provisions.
President Donald Trump holds a White House pep rally of sorts for his so-called Big Beautiful Bill. But resolving fractures within the Republican Party is not the domestic policy bill's only change. Karen Kafa is in Washington with the latest.
The White House says a Thursday event aimed at highlighting how the president's so-called Big Beautiful Bill will benefit millions of working-class Americans. But also on Thursday, the president's July 4th deadline for having that bill on his desk became a little more challenging.
House Speaker Mike Johnson insists Hill Republicans are still on track to send a massive tax and spending bill to President Donald Trump's desk by the end of next week.
When we said we would get the whole thing to the president's desk by July 4th, and that was our objective, many of you also rolled your eyes, but we are on target right now to do that very thing.
But on Thursday, the Senate's rules referee deeming certain provisions out of bounds for a simple majority vote. Most importantly, the nonpartisan Senate parliamentarian rejecting the bill's proposed change to taxes that states can impose to help pay for Medicaid coverage. That's a major jolt to many Republicans who wanted to use the levy to offset other provisions in the bill, including an extension of Trump's 2017 tax cuts. Nixing that provision could sway Senate Republicans worried about politically unpopular Medicaid cuts and challenges to rural hospitals in their states, but it could also rankle fiscal conservatives. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says Republicans can work it out.
We're plowing forward, and when we actually get on it still is an open question, but rest assured we will.
If and when the Senate passes a version of the bill, it still has to go back to the House for approval. Speaker Johnson says clearing the bill has the full focus of congressional Republicans right now.
There's nothing more important that we should be involved in and can be involved in than getting the one big beautiful bill to the president's desk.
The July 4th deadline imposed by the president is largely arbitrary, and Republicans could take more time to hash things out. Meanwhile, congressional Democrats have made it clear that Republicans need to find votes on their own. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
The Supreme Court blocked Planned Parenthood from suing South Carolina over allegations it is infringing on civil rights. The lawsuit was filed after the governor's 2018 executive order pulled Planned Parenthood's Medicaid funding because it provides abortions. The order also blocked Planned Parenthood patients from receiving services like birth control, well-person exams, and cancer screenings. Planned Parenthood lawsuit says the federal law gives Medicaid patients a right to access care to any qualified doctor's office. The Trump administration said the court's ruling sided with the president's stance on abortion.
The president has always maintained that Americans should not be forced to violate their conscience and their religious liberty by having their tax dollars fund abortions, and we're glad the Supreme Court ruled on that side.
The court voted along party lines in the 6-3 decision. Tomorrow is the last day for the court's term, and the justices are set to release decisions on several major cases, including on a government task force healthcare recommendation and the First Amendment rights. Days after U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, the Secretary of Defense is defending their impact and criticizing media coverage. This comes after an early U.S. intelligence assessment opposed the White House's claim the sites were obliterated. Lee Waldman has the latest.
The Trump administration is doubling down Thursday on the impact of the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. In a press briefing at the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth criticized an early Pentagon intelligence assessment that stated the strikes did not destroy core components and only set Iran's nuclear capabilities back by months.
It was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment.
Secretary Hegseth also criticized the media's reporting of that early Pentagon report on the damage done.
I hope with all the ink spilled, all of your outlets find the time to properly recognize this historic change in continental security.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, deflected on questions regarding the battle damage assessment and says he's never been pushed to alter them.
I've never been pressured by the president or the secretary to do anything other than tell them exactly what I'm thinking, and that's exactly what I've done.
For the first time since a truce was announced, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, spoke out, saying Iran will not surrender.
A great Iran and the word of surrender, they don't match. They don't match with each other. It's a joke. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
In a Truth Social post Thursday, President Trump also challenged the narrative that enriched uranium had been moved from the nuclear sites before the U.S. strikes. Quote, nothing was taken out of facility. I'm Lee Waldman reporting.
Coming up, how the Trump administration's economic policy is affecting economic growth.
And unemployment claims are up, what the latest data says about the major factors influencing the job market.
This heat wave is almost done. Find out when we cool off next.
The Ohio Art Corridor is a destination experience. We would like this to be the largest outdoor art gallery in the world.
Portsmouth was able to field an incredible team for a brief moment in the sun that almost was sweet enough to get them a national championship.
We got land granted to us in Ohio. Great opportunity. Let's go. How would you know you got here? It was just sheer determination and patience and just hard, back-breaking work.
The bridge was acclaimed at the time of being an engineering marvel.
Progress is all about taking the lessons of the past and doing better. So I would hope that now that we know better, we will do better.
For more than 70 years, WOUB Public Media has been the place where people in our region turn to learn how stories of the past ignite the imagination of the future. It's where information, entertainment, and education work together to inform, enlighten, and inspire generations. It's the place where the community gathers to hear and see our world in new and innovative ways. WOUB, the public media you trust that's worthy of your support.
WOUB is recognizing members of our Cornerstone Society. The Cornerstone Society is a group that wants to ensure the future of public media in our region. It includes people across our area who value news, entertainment, and cultural programming, as well as the educational services WOUB provides. Also included are graduates of Ohio University who took part in the WOUB Student Professional Development Program. Thanks to the Cornerstone Society for their generous support. To learn how you can be involved, email woub@woub.org.
Welcome back into Newswatch. Now, guys, I've got to say, this muggy weather has not been agreeing with me. How have you been holding up, Charlie?
It's not been good. I'll say that.
I'm ready for a break from it, but I really don't think we're going to get any, especially with this rain that's been in the area. It's just going to make it more and more muggy out there.
Absolutely. I know we had a couple showers earlier today, Steve. Are we going to be seeing more of that in the future?
You know, fingers crossed that we're done for the day because we had that line move through, and especially once the sun goes down, where it's going to cut its power source. So I think we're good for the day.
Absolutely.
But taking a look at the radar, we do have a few things still in the area, scattered showers. This has moved through already, and now we're kind of in the middle of these two fronts. But again, once the sun goes down, we essentially pull its power source, so these stronger storms should kind of head out of the area. Now, these are going to just keep happening at least into tomorrow and Saturday, and they're going to just be an afternoon, early evening event, much like today. It's just because that sun has just kind of heated up the ground, and it gives it all the ingredients, and it's kind of pulling the cap off of a boiling pot. And this heat is going to unfortunately last into the weekend with that mugginess because of that rain. Now, really interesting, if you look at the heat map, you can see how when this rain hits these areas like Columbus, Lancaster, it drops these temperatures 15, 20 degrees, and that is going to happen in our area as we've already dropped down to 75 degrees just because, and we've started to rebound already, but it did drop it off just because it just cools it off so much with that rain. Now, we still do have that heat advisory in effect until 8 p.m. for those areas, and we do have our extreme heat warning, but we do also have some flood warnings and flood advisories just because of these downpours. Now, these areas are going to expire at 8 p.m., and so are we with our extreme heat warning, but we are going to get re-upped with a heat advisory tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., so we have one more day with the heat advisory. we can kind of see that our heat dome has kind of been condensed and also started to kind of exit stage left. And that's been because this frontal system to our north has just been acting on it over the past few days, manipulating it, and it's finally going to start to break down and give us a little bit of relief. But it's also going to be what's providing the moisture for these storms that have been popping up yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So that's going to keep happening as we go throughout the next few days. As for tonight, we might have a few lingering showers in the area, but again, once we pull that heat source, these thunderstorms should lose their power. Overnight low of 71, so really not much relief in those overnight hours, so still a pretty muggy one. Tomorrow, again, one more day with the heat, and we do have a chance of thunderstorms again, much like today, where it's going to heat up at about 2 or 3 o'clock, and we're going to see some storms roll in. Now, the thing is, once we have this high-pressure system move out of our area, it's going to allow for maybe these storms to stick around a little bit longer, so they might be more longer-track systems. And again, because we have this move out of the area, and it'll kind of set up shop maybe more Friday night into Saturday morning. But then Saturday is our best chance for widespread rain at 80% right now. So that might be, in terms of a washout, that'll be our most widespread rain threat. But then one thing this is going to do, other than give us a lot of humidity, is slowly cool us off. And looking at this map, this means we're just going to be a tick above average about a week from now. So it's going to be a lot nicer outside than it has been this week. Now, taking a look at our 7-day, yeah, there's a lot of rain in the area, but there's not that much heat. We've already kind of started to head down after tomorrow, 89, 91, but we don't really see a real cool down until Tuesday when a cold front moves through and really starts to give us some real relief. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Steve. The economy shrank 0.5% in the first 3 months of 2025. That's more than double what the Commerce Department reported in earlier estimates. The nation's GDP, a measure of the nation's economy, was projected to decrease by 0.2. It could indicate the Trump administration's tariffs from earlier this year were more harmful than initially predicted. Continuing unemployment claims are at their highest levels since November 2021. Those are the unemployment claims for people without a job for more than 1 week. However, initial unemployment claims fell over the last week. The new data from the U.S. Department of Labor shows about 236,000 people filed for initial unemployment benefits during the week ending June 21st. That's down by about 10,000 from the week before. The weekly reports are a potential indicator of how steep tariffs, cutbacks to the federal workforce, and reductions in immigration are impacting the economy.
New single-family home sales are declining in the United States. According to the May report from the Census Bureau, only 623,000 new home sales are projected this year. That's down almost 100,000 units from last month's projections. Plus, a number of the unsold houses in the U.S. hit a high not seen since late 2007. High prices and mortgage rates are close to 7%, continue to price some would-be home buyers out of the market. Summer gas prices are at their lowest in years. The national average for a gallon of gas was about $3.20 this week. The last time the prices were cheaper than this time of year was 2021. The price is only a few cents higher than a few months ago and more than 20 cents lower than this time last year. Gas prices usually go up in the summer. AAA predicts about 62 million Americans will travel by car this 4th of July holiday. The recent ceasefire between Israel and Iran stabilized prices. Next, the new vaccine advisory panel to the CDC took their first vote, the latest move by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s controversial appointments.
When steel went down, it took 150,000 jobs.
Some of the highest unemployment in the nation.
And all the traumas that came with it.
We want jobs!
When our kids get hurt or get sick, we have no health insurance.
You don't just hear that and ignore it.
All sectors of the community join together to help these kids.
Monday at 10 on WOUB.
The Electron Solar Farm.
Pentagon official. With executive orders.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz.
I'm Margaret Hoover.
I'm Christiana Manpour in London.
Bring us up to speed there.
Israel is vowing serious consequences.
Did you get a commitment from President Trump?
We have to work on it.
When that story is told, it will be easier for us to see each other like the people who came before us.
Today we live in a time when meaningful discourse is needed more than ever.
Is this just, at the end of the day, very smart politics?
It's, never compromise on the accuracy.
This is the story of modern war, how it's fought and how it's changing us.
If this is the way we're going to start breaking the ice, then let's do it.
The British Empire, the biggest there has ever been, ruled over a fifth of the world's land surface and almost a quarter of its people. But how did a tiny island off the coast of Europe claim power over so much of the world? These questions are today more contested than perhaps ever before.
A mural in Nelsonville is stirring up a lot of feelings both online and in person.
It even prompted Nelsonville's city manager to talk about it at a city council meeting earlier this week. Newswatch reporter Joshua Herner has more.
This expletive-laced mural on Ted Campbell's property is turning a lot of heads in Nelsonville. Campbell says the mural is his way of protesting the current political climate. He says people need to have more empathy towards each other.
And we're all human beings. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, Asian, it doesn't matter. Show some empathy and be human.
Campbell isn't shy about using his property to voice his opinions. It's something he's done once before after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
So the thought process on the last mural was to be pretty simple and straight to the point while kind of being behind a veil. So if you know the book, you know the meaning of it, and then the words protect the choice and pro-Roe are for the people that don't know the book. And this mural is a lot more, I guess, just crass and violent because that's what we need right now.
This most recent mural prompted City Manager Fred Holmes to voice his opinion during Monday's City Council meeting. Holmes says as a private citizen, he's upset with the language on the mural.
I do not use this with my grandkids, my great-grandkids, my children. We don't use that kind of language in our family, okay? And the reason I was so strong on it is that I don't...
And that sparked a wide range of comments on Facebook in support and opposition to the mural. Nelsonville Councilmember Cameron Peck says it's Campbell's First Amendment right.
The people who own that house have the right to express their freedom of speech in any way that they find appropriate.
Reporting for Newswatch, I'm Joshua Herner in Nelsonville.
Obesity-related liver disease is on the rise in the U.S., affecting about 100 million people.
Mandy Gaither talks to a man who overcame obesity to get a life-saving transplant.
In December 2021, Eric Brooks found out his liver was failing. To continue living, he needed a transplant, but he says because of his weight, he was denied that surgery more than once. Without it, he was given months to live.
I wasn't necessarily worried about myself 100%. I was more worried, about my wife and my child, letting them down because, I'm going to die.
Brooks says for 2 years there was no option for a transplant. Then he learned the Mayo Clinic could perform a bariatric surgery and liver transplant at the same time.
It was just, kind of a Hail Mary attempt to... It's our last chance to see if we can make this happen.
Transplant surgeon Dr. Julie Heimbach says it's not uncommon for patients to be denied transplants based solely on their weight. She says severe obesity is linked to more complicated surgeries and a transplant is very complex.
So that approach is understandable, but on the other hand, that leads to patients who have, otherwise treatable condition not being able to access that life-saving treatment.
In 2023, Heimbach performed a liver transplant with sleeve gastrectomy on Brooks. She says treating both conditions set him up for long-term success.
We're hopeful that Eric will have a normal lifespan.
He's now 200 pounds lighter, and the milestones he feared he'd miss are now memories he gets to carry with him.
For me, it's been life-altering. To be able to do things I've never in my adult life been able to do is amazing.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Children younger than 2 and older adults were hospitalized for COVID-19 at similar rates last respiratory virus season. That's according to data released at a meeting of vaccine advisors to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC data says there were 268 COVID-19 hospitalizations for every 100,000 babies younger than 6 months old. Compare that to 266 hospitalizations for every 100,000 adults ages 65 through 74. The data shows nearly 90% of young children hospitalized were not up to date on their COVID-19 vaccines.
The vaccine advisory group to the CDC voted to recommend a new vaccine for RSV for newborns and infants. It was the first vote by the new advisory committee on immunization practices since being appointed by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He abruptly dismissed the previous panel earlier this month. The new group of advisors has been met with some controversy since some have been accused of holding anti-vaccine views. The FDA approved the antibody vaccine, known by the brand name Influenza, earlier this month. Coming up, scientists have noticed a new behavior in killer whales.
On iconic America.
For people around the world, the Statue of Liberty stands for freedom.
It's a place where many, many, many Americans can trace their history to.
What it's supposed to symbolize is the abolition of slavery, but nobody knows that story.
It's hard to argue that there's a more iconic symbol of America today than the Statue of Liberty.
Tuesday at 9 on WOUB.
The American Revolution changed the world.
Everybody had the sense of possibility worth fighting for.
What took place here still leaves us in awe.
We can work towards equality together.
Wow, this is the missing piece. Incredible.
To confront these figures from ancient history is a great privilege.
Our history tells us who we are, where we came from.
And it's all connected.
Like links in a chain.
Like links in a chain, yeah.
All I can do is say thank you.
Wow, this is phenomenal. I'm really grateful for this.
New research from scientists in Washington state revealed something unique about the behavior of killer whales. They may like to groom themselves. A behavioral ecologist was browsing through drone footage of orcapods he studies in the Salish Sea and the Pacific Northwest. He found some of the orcas collected a form of algae called bull kelp from the seafloor to roll between their bodies. Researchers called this unusual behavior allokelping and believe it may be a form of grooming to improve the orca's skin. It could also be a way of socializing between orcas. Now, Charlie, do we think that it is grooming or do we think it's socializing?
You know, I don't know, but I have to say, that doesn't sound very comfortable. Algae? I mean, come on. I don't know. Doesn't sound very enjoyable. But speaking of the ocean, I mean, we've been getting a tidal wave of rain.
We definitely have been, and hopefully we're done for that with tonight, the rain. And we will be with an overnight low of 71. That rain is going to taper off. Tomorrow it does return with the heat, and we are looking like we have a lot of rain in the forecast for this weekend.
That's all we have this evening. For Steve Nedlick, I'm Megan Acker.
And I'm Charlie Ehlenfeld. Stay tuned for the PBS NewsHour coming up next. Have a great night.
This is Past